Hey everybody, so welcome to this little tutorial. Seconds over here, and it's been a while yet again. Um, so what I'm going to be going to today is I'll be using Affinity to kind of do a bit of, como se dice, um, the tutorial. So as an introduction to Affinity Studio. So right now, I think most of us who are in the graphics scene are aware that Affinity is now partnered with Canva and is offering Affinity for free. So if you've had Affinity designer, publisher, and photo, and then you upgraded to, well, now Affinity itself is free. So what I want to do is kind of take us through a bit of understanding some of the main features if you're going into graphic design. Things like understanding the tool set and understanding the layers and some of the other filters that might be up there, masking and other things like that. So I think the best way to learn is through a project, and my aim really is to go through and do this little thing. I call it like making a sandwich. So my aim is to create something that looks sort of like this. So I already have like a folder with all of the elements already. The best if you could gather your own as well. You can get them from different sources. I'm working with some stock footage. I kind of went through Google and found a few in different places. So these are the files I'm working with. So let me just give you just these. And here are the images I'm going to be working with. So I have a bread slice from Larmy of PNG tree, providing some tomato slices. We have some cheese, some lettuce from the TD, a nice background, and I also got myself you know, picnic cloth. So we're gonna open up Affinity and kind of get started with that. So because we're working with raster images, we're going to be working in the pixel mode for now. So we have those tools available to us. So if we're going to get started, we're going to start with a new file. So we're going to File and New. And if it's the first time you're starting up, it's going to pop up this window here. That gives us an idea of what our page sizes are going to be, and a few other things as well. Let's create that background. So I'm going to go with something for the screen. So if you scroll down, you'll see a bunch of different categories like canvases, video and web, social media, devices, etc. Print sizes and the works. You can change your orientation from portrait to landscape by clicking here. And see if you can find one for screen, video and web. I'll go with the vertical video. Well, it's no horizontal since it's a landscape. So I'll click on that and you'll see that my settings have been changed here. My dots per inch for screen is typically 72 pixels per inch or dots per inch. The width is 1920 pixels by 1080 pixels. And if you want to keep a transparent background, you can. You can also toggle it by clicking on this little button here. If you don't want it, it will at least help you to see how transparency works. And this can be something that you change later on while you're working. So I'll just leave my properties as they are and choose to create a document. So this is what we have working with us, where there's no transparent background, but if you want to change it, in case you do, you can go to your document setup up top, and if you come right down, you're going to see that button somewhere around here, transparent background. So we can toggle that on, press OK, and what we'll see is a checker pattern that represents transparency. So what I'm going to do is, with those images that I have, I'm going to bring them into Affinity. Now, I think one thing I should make mention of, especially if you're just starting out, is if you've got experience in other software like, say, Photoshop or Illustrator, or maybe Krita, GIMP, or Inkscape, these are going to be a plus for you. And I know typically what we would want to do is we'd go to File, like you want to bring some files in, we say File, and then we say Place. In my experience, while I've been using Affinity Studio so far, it always seems to give an error. So I think the easiest way to go about doing this is by going to your folder where you have your icons or your images and just select them all and literally drag them into Affinity like so. And then it'll add them in. Press OK. And so now we have each one of these inside our file. Now we're working to learn about layers. And right now the tool I'm working with is the Move tool. It's the first tool that's typically given to you to click and move things around. One thing to note is that with each of your tools, you do have properties up top to kind of help guide you. So if, for example, I'm on the Move tool here, you'll see things like auto select. So rather than me having to select my individual layers as I see them, if, for example, I want to click on the tomato, I don't have to click on the layer, the tomato here. I can just click on it and start moving it around. If I see the lettuce, that's kind of behind. So we have things like that too. In other cases, when you start moving things, you'll see properties of those things. So for example, I can replace an image if I need to. I can do a few other things too. But for now, we're just going to take it simple. What I want to do is, like I showed before, is assemble a sandwich. So what we're going to do is start tackling things one by one. So our sandwich was placed on a table. And so we do have an image of a table here, like so. Looks nice, rustic wood. What I want to do is I want to increase the size of this. So if I click on this here, and I'm on my Move tool, we do get the option to scale things, or we can even rotate it. So if I want to move things around, I can click, drag. I want to scale things around, I can grab one of the corners and pull it. And one thing I can appreciate is that it locks the proportions for you, so you don't end up doing things like stretching things in the wrong way. If you did want to kind of change things, you do have some tips right at the bottom. So down here, while we're on the Move tool, it does give you some option to drag to move it around. Click another object to select it. Click on an empty area to deselect, and return to enter mouse. Sorry, to enter move or duplicate values. So what I'll do is I'll just make this fill out, and of course you can still see my watermark, but that's fine. I'm just going to scale this until it is within our canvas. I'll also turn on my keyviz. It's another application I have. It allows me to display my keystrokes. So keyviz here, and just change the settings because I'm working with two monitors right now. So show my clicks. Whenever I click, you can see what I press. So click and drag. We have that, right? So we have that. That's good. With layers, I want you to think of layers as, say, individual sheets of paper, one on top of the other. So right now we want this to be at the bottom. So in our layer stack, we can see all these different layers. I'm going to drag this all the way to the bottom. Even though we can't see the others, that's how we want things to be. And I'll show you an example. So for example, we have this bread slice here, and we have this tablecloth, or this picnic cloth. So for the picnic cloth, I'm just going to reduce the size just so you can see how we can shift things around. If this one is on top and I shift the bread on top of that, see the bread goes on top. So that's how layers work. So for now, we're going to work on the sandwich itself. And then afterwards, we're going to work on, placement. So what I want to do is I want to reduce the size of this so that it's small enough to work with. Don't mind the watermarks. There are different ways that we can go about cleaning up an image. And this is where selection comes into play. We do have some selection tools. If you scroll down a little bit more on the side, so as you hover, you see these different tools giving an idea of what each tool is for, which is very helpful. It kind of takes the speaking part out of it, so I don't have to say exactly what it does. But I'm going to be looking for one that allows me to select the object itself. Right, so we have different kinds of selections, and I guess I'll start with these. I'm going to start with the rectangle and the marquee, just so you have an understanding of how it works. When we make a selection, basically what we do is we isolate our operations, or we isolate what we want to do to our layout. So right now I'm on the bread slice. If, for example, I was to draw on this with the brush tool, you come here, the paintbrush tool, shortcut is B, and say I choose, I don't know, I'll go for red for now, and I choose to start drawing. You'll realize you don't see anything happening until after I go into the box. And what I do find cool about Affinity Studio is that rather than me actually editing this image, it creates a new layer for me so that I don't end up messing up the layer I had before. That can be very helpful. The aim is to kind of work non-destructively. You don't want to end up messing up your layers, your drawings, etc. And it generates a pixel layout. So what I want to do with this, as it shows you here, is with my selection also. I'm going to show you also that there's different modes you can use. So again, like I said, every tool that you have has some properties up top. You have things like for your selection, you can have a new selection. So every time you drag, you create a new selection and the old one disappears. You have add, where you can add to the selection. So you can choose to add to what you had before. You have subtract, where you can subtract from what already exists. So you can cut a hole through your selection. And then you have intersect, where, whatever fits, think of it as a Venn diagram. So now we have the marquee intersecting with what was previously there. For the bread though, I really want that I can hide the white part or get rid of the white part, as well as the alarmy at the bottom. So we're going to do something called masking. If you use Photoshop before, you do have the option to just make a selection and then delete it. Now, it's really tough to do that with the rectangle marquee tool or even any of these other marquee tools. One that could come in handy is your freehand selection tool, which allows you to select freehand. But if your hand isn't steady, it can be problematic to try to go all the way around this bread without your hand kind of wavering, right? Like this is what I would come up with if I was done, and that doesn't cover everything that I want. But that tool also has different options. You have freehand, you have polygonal, where you just do clicks as you go, but that's too angular. You won't get exactly what you want. You have another one, which is the magnetic one, and that one tries to detect the edge of your image. So I'm going to zoom in a little closer so you can see with the magnifying tool. And you can also navigate if you have your middle mouse. You can click on the middle mouse and you can scroll up and down. If you hold down shift, you can go right and left. Control zooms in and out. So this one allows you to select along the edge. It tries its best to do that for you. I mean, right now, because of where I clicked, I override it. But when I press escape, if I start the click and just start moving my cursor, it automatically plots the points that I want. Again, this is very helpful, But sometimes if you have a more complicated shape, it can be time consuming, right? So this is how we could go about going around the bread. Just moving our cursor, not clicking, just moving it along. If you go too fast, you won't get something as accurate. I made the selection here, and you come around, and then when we're done, we click. And so we get a nice selection right around the bread. So basically what's happening now is that I've made the selection right around the bread, and I want everything else to disappear. Now, one way we typically do things if you work in other software is you might just press delete on the keyboard and things just disappear like that, right? I made the selection around the bread, I press delete, it vanishes. And I realize my head is in the way. So what I will do for you is I will shift my head over to the right, or to the left rather, so you can actually see what my clicks are doing. That should be a little better for you. So I press delete, and right in the layers panel, you'll see a shape. You see the bread, and you see like a black box or a black outline of the same bread. This first one is what we're visibly seeing, and the image that you see beside it is a mask. And a mask is really something that helps to hide. So rather than actually deleting your pixels or erasing them, you end up hiding them, which again, I can give Affinity a plus for that, for doing it that way. But I'm going to undo, Control Z again. What I want is the opposite of that. So I wouldn't press delete. Rather, I would actually hit the mask button itself. And what the mask button will do is, based on your selection around the object, it will hide everything else but the object that you've selected. So if I hit this button here, mask here, you click that and it hides everything else but the bread. So this is what masking does. One thing you will notice if you look really close is I have a fuzzy little edge around my bread, and that's because I failed to look at a particular setting for my selection. But this just gives me another opportunity to kind of show you a quicker way of selecting the bread. So I'm going to remove that mask, undo. And the setting I was talking about that I didn't look at is feather. Feather just says, based on the selection that you've made, it's going to have a softer edge or a softer selection. So if you have 0 for your feathering, it's going to be a sharp selection. And if you have something higher, it's going to be a more fuzzy selection. So I'll just change this back to 0. All right, so here's a quicker way of selecting the bread. And you're going to have to download something in Affinity for it to work. So it's going to be called the Object Selection Tool. And it says select areas of pixel layers using machine learning. Click to select object at a point, drag to select object in a rectangle, hold Alt to select components, and Shift Alt for parts if available. You get the option to learn more. But if you never used this tool before, it's gonna ask you to download the machine learning, addition, and then that will allow you to work. So as you see, me using this tool, just hovering over, it gives you like this blue area around the shape, and you have multi-part objects, you have soft edges, things like that. So let's say, for example, I go like so, right? Go to the side, you make a selection, try to select just the bread, or if I click and drag, right, this area, you'll see that only the bread is selected, and that makes life a lot easier rather than having to go around it manually. So now I can hit the mask button, and now my bread is selected. Yeah. So with that done, we can actually do the same thing for some of the others. Now, mind you, some of the images I've downloaded or imported or placed have a transparent background by default, which you can get some PNG images that way. But if they have a white background or a fairly clear background, then that's another way we can work, like making the section like the bread. So we have the bread here, and we're going to make a sandwich. So we're going to be putting things up together. So I have a few other items. I have some turkey breast. I have a lettuce. I have some tomato. So let's do the tomato first. So I'll do the same thing. I'll use a different tool this time. So rather than object select, there's another tool which is called the flood select tool. Some of us might know it as the magic wand tool, which allows us to make selections based on colors. And that color is going to be based on your tolerance. Now, the higher your tolerance level is the more range you have for the color that you select. So for example, if I select the white area like so, and mind you, I'm still on the bread layer, so let me just go back to tomato layer. Click on the white, you'll see the selection goes around white. And that's good. If my tolerance was higher, it will probably go past what is necessary. So now it's selecting everything. So watch out for your tolerance level. That helps to curtail how much color range you have. So if you select white and you only want the white, you can do that. The same options of the rectangle selection tool are there for the mode. So you can add to the selection, you can subtract, you can intersect and things like that. In my case, I don't want to be selecting the white. I want to be selecting the tomato. But this could still work in our favor. But just to know, if you make a selection and you want to invert them, in pixel mode, you go up to the top where it says pixel. You'll see pixel selection. And one of the options here is to invert. If you click that, it's going to select everything else that you had previously selected. So it's going to invert the selection. And then we can actually hit the mask button. And we get the result that we expect to see. Sometimes, based on your selection, and I'm going to invert that. So sometimes based on your selection, you might want to select a little bit more than is there. So if I also come in really close, I might end up with like a slightly white edge, and that might be annoying. So you can actually increase your range of selection just a little bit by tweaking it. So again, pixel, selection, and you have some options like grow, shrink, feather, smooth, refine the edges, outlines, etc. So I'm going to choose grow and shrink. So we can actually increase or decrease the range of our selection. So if I want to go in a little bit more, I'm going to grow my selection. So I could say, hey, let's grow this a little bit more. And you see that it starts to go inward. If you reduce it, you can see how that affects your selection too. So I'm going to go up by about 1 pixel. And that's good. Press apply, zoom out. And instead of inverting this time, I can actually hit delete, which will give me a mask still, but at least it will delete what I don't want to see. I don't want to see the white, so I'm going to hit delete. And then we have our tomato. So we just click. And then with this, I'm going to reduce the size of our tomato on our bread slice. If you want more tomatoes, we could reuse the same image by duplicating it. So if you're on a layer and you want to duplicate it, you just go to the layers panel, right click what you see, and press duplicate. That's one way of doing it. So you can duplicate that way, have a new layer, you can shift. So another one is Control J as a shortcut. That's coming from Photoshop. So if you press Control J, you make another tomato. And better still, much easier than that, is if you hold on Alt and click and drag, you make a duplicate of what you've selected. Okay? So we don't need that much tomatoes. So if you want to keep things simple, maybe I'll just take like just one of these tomatoes. So Alt, drag that down, and I'll just take this tomato. So I'm going to adjust my mask a little bit more, just so I can isolate the one tomato. I'm going to zoom in real close, space bar, drag that, and you can use a brush tool on your mask. So if you're on a mask, just know that masks only work with black and white. Black is meant to hide things, and white is meant to show things. Case in point, I've clicked on the thumbnail here, this tomato one. I'm going to hide this tomato. So what I'll do is on my brush tool, I'm going to make sure I have my right brush options. So in my brushes, I want to select something that is basic. A round brush is fine. And we can increase our brush size right here. We have 8 pixels. We increase it as much as you need to. And in our layers, click on the mask. And I'm going to make sure that my color is black. And if you hover over it, it's actually going to show you a preview. Let me hide the lower one. It's going to show you a preview of what the expectation is. So if I click and drag, I can start hiding, not erasing it, I'm actually hiding it, hiding parts of the tomato I don't want to see. So you can use that to brush things out. And then if you want to be more careful, you can zoom in, Control, scroll middle wheel, and go in and tidy things up a bit. If you want to reduce the size of your brush, you can use the square bracket, open square bracket, and the close square bracket to adjust the size. So close square bracket, larger, small square bracket, open square bracket, small. Right, so now we have one tomato. So now we have both of these. And just so it doesn't feel too much of a copy, you can always reduce the size or rotate it also. So I have 3 large tomatoes there, and we're good. Next is going to be our lettuce. So I'll hide the tomatoes for now, reduce the size of this so it fits on our bread, nice and easy. Can rotate it as I need, something like so. And then we want to get rid of the white. So much like before, we can say either we can use the flood select tool or we can use the object selection tool. So click on the right layer, drag over the lettuce, and that's there, that's selected. I'll just hit the mask button so everything else gets hidden. My selection is not what I like, and I think it looks okay. Then I can always adjust the pixels as needed. But for now, this looks good. Hit the mask button, and we're good to go. Now, again, we can tweak some of this. So there are some white areas that show up right here. You're going to go in the brush tool, reduce the size, and on that mask, that's what I'm on right now. I can choose to, hide out some of the parts. Some other parts that need to be erased. And as tedious as it seems, it's always good to refine your stuff as much as you can put your own hand into it to make it clean. That shows the effort that you put into the work. Right? All right, so we got most of that. So that's fine, as is. Next we have the turkey breast, which is the rib. So I'm gonna use the size. Make sure I'm on the right layer. 30. Where's the 30? And that's why we're peeking out of the sandwich. Let me hide the lettuce for now. Do the same thing again. Say object selection tool. Make sure I'm on the right layer. This part. Let's say multiple part object. Let's say soft edge. We can do that too. And then hit the mask button. Okay. We have slices of turkey on our sandwich. So if something stick out. So we have the lettuce, some of the lettuce sticking out on the other side too. Right? And we have some tomato showing elsewhere. It's a U there. And the other one, oh wait, that's one slice by itself, which we don't need. We won't need this one anymore. That was a single tomato slice. So I could have actually just used that one select one tomato slice instead of going through the effort of creating a separate one. But that's also fine too. If needs be, I could use the same tool here. Just have that selected and masked, which is also fine. So this one could be deleted. So you put that much effort into it, you get your image, right? So one thing I would do next, just to kind of finalize this, is I want to put another slice of bread on top of this to kind of finish off. So the bread slice that we have before, it's going to hold on Alt, drag that out. I'm just going to shift this bread slice up to the top to kind of complete the sandwich. So now once you put that on top, you have some bits hanging out, and I won't make it perfectly on top. I'll probably offset the rotation a little bit, right? And so we have some tomato, some lettuce, tomato, and so. Now with all the sandwich stuff done, we can actually group it together too. So we have these different layers, and it'll be kind of tough to kind of move each one individually. So let's group them. If you want to group your stuff, you select your layers that are there. So you have the top bread slice, and I'm going to go all the way down to the bottom bread slice. I have to make sure I watch out for this picnic cloth. So I'm going to bring that below. Select this bread, shift, and then click the top one. So that's going to select everything from the top to the bottom, the first to the last selection, and everything in between. If you use Control instead, Control would allow you to select them individually. And Control also has another cool feature. It works especially when you're working with your images or your selections. Is if you want to bring back up the selection you have for something, for example, the lettuce selection. If I press Control and hold it down and click on the mask, or even click on the lettuce, you're going to see a selection pop up based on that. So if you Control select the thumbnail, these little icons or these little thumbnails representing the layers, then it makes a selection around there. So two ways you can use Control depending on what you want. So Shift, click the last one, and then to group, we just click on this folder icon, groups everything together. I'll just double click on it and call it sandwich. And so now when we're using our move tool, you have auto select yes, which is good. You click and it allows you to select the group. So we can move the entire group as one. Before I finish off though, let's put the cloth on. So for the cloth, all well and good. Just gonna put this, make this a little bigger. I'll set it somewhere down here. We can still see like the watermark and such, which I suppose we can live with. For the cloth though, I'll just use this to just select what's mostly evident to us this side, and I'm going to mask that. So now some of the others are gone. Now to make it all blend together really well, it'd be good to have some shadows. So we're going to sandwich, move this around. It'd be nice to have a shadow that's cast right below the picnic cloth. And so this is where layer effects come into play. So if I click on that cloth, right below our layers, we've been pressing mask layer, but before that you also have layer effect. If you click on that, we have some options, different options. But we just want to add a shadow. So you have an outer shadow that you can add. So we click on outer shadow, that checkbox there. And if you click on the text itself, you get the details of it. So now we have some options here. We have the opacity, meaning how transparent it is, or how opaque it is rather. So the higher the opacity, the darker something will be. But right now we can't see anything because we don't have anything for the radius. So when I increase the radius, you're going to see a little shadow being cast now, right down here. And opacity, the higher the opacity, the darker it is. The lower the opacity, the more subtle. So you must gauge how you want it to look. You also have offset. So you can choose how things are offset. And you also have intensity. So the higher the intensity, the sharper your shadow becomes, the lower. So this is fine as it is. You can even change the angle. So based on your offsets, if we change the angle, you're going to see how the shadow is affected. You have the offset tool too, so you can actually drag the shadow how you want. One other property we touch on is the blend mode, but we'll leave that alone for now. That one is how one layer blends with another. So basically it's like saying how much is the shadow blending with anything below it. Multiply is fine for shadows. So we'll press close, and we have it. We're also going to do the same thing for the shadow. So we want the shadow to cast, the sandwich to cast a shadow. So we're going on the sandwich group. And we're going to hit the effects button again. Say outer shadow. Click on that. Increase our radius. Right, you can start seeing a shadow. The offset too. And I kind of want it to have the same angle of the shadow being cast. So that's there. Increase our intensity if we don't like what we see, but this looks okay. Let's close. And so now we have, a sandwich. The last thing I'll do is just add a text. So let's make this a little bigger. Let's pull this back a little, or if you feel like it, you want a piece of your sandwich to be covered by a picnic cloth, you could do that too. Right? Now let's add a text, just to say, sandwich anyone. Your text tool is found right here. Looks like a T, and you have different types. Anytime you have a tool that has all these arrows, and you would have seen me doing that before, if you click on a hole where you see an arrow, it gives you more options. So for the text tool, we have two types. We have artistic and we have frame. Artistic is fine for basic stuff. Frame is when you want to keep things within a text box. So I'll just choose that. Just click here. And one thing that's going to matter to us is the size and the contrast. Contrast makes sure that things pop up from what's going on around them. We have a nice rustic feel on the table, and the table is kind of dark. So we want to make sure that we have a lighter text. So with the text, we can choose our font or typeface rather, or fonts for the typeface, and we can choose the size. So I'll choose something that's big enough. Let's say sandwich. Anyone? And just to have fun, I'm going to change the color. You click on the text color here and choose white. You can choose any color you want. You can choose your typeface. So maybe you can actually go through and see which one works best for you. Right? So I have a lot of fonts or a lot of text types. So I'll go with Hey August. If you don't have that, you can use whatever you need. And I think the size is a little too small, so I'm just going to press this increase font size button. Do that a few times and just shift this down a little and put the text here. So a nice little flow going downward diagonally. The sandwich anyway. And that would be the gist of it. Now, of course, you're working in Affinity and you want to be able to save it as an image. So you're not going to leave it here. And plus, it's good to save your work while you're working. I haven't saved, so I was living dangerously here. So if you want to save, file, save, shortcut is Control S. That's universal to most software. Right? So stay saved there. Make me a sandwich, and I'll just say, make me a sandwich. Affinity file. To save it as something that is viewable, like an image file or a PDF, we say File, Export, Export, and then we can save as different image types, JPG, PNG, GIF, and a few other things. So PDF, if you want to go for printing it, then you can go with that. But for now, I'll just save as a PNG. So you click on PNG, you choose one of these options. HDR is fine. The third is fine, whichever one you want to go with. Keep your width and your height that you had started with. It's going to try and calculate your size based on your selection. So right now this is going to be 1 megabyte big. If you have something like higher, this one's going to be 8.4 megabytes. So more colors. So think of those things too. If you just choose PNG, I think that one gives you the option to choose the quality. But for now, this is fine. Just don't export hidden layers, which is good, and things like that. Once you do that, you just press export, choose where you want things to be. Say make me a sandwich, PNG, save, and inside our folder, we will now have a make me a sandwich PNG image. Okay, and that's the gist of working with layers, masking, and a few other features that Affinity has to offer. So hopefully this was helpful to somebody who might be trying out Affinity Studio for the first time. So thanks for sticking around. God bless. Do have a wonderful rest of the day. Peace.